Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 7221.
Bill number 7221, an ordinance concerning purchasing, capital improvement contracts, prevailing wage, and local hiring.
Mr. Barron.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pete Barron with the administration. I have a couple of people making their way up here. We have our budget officer, Mr. Trumbauer, Director of Central Services, Ms. Anderson is around. Our procurement officer, Mr. Heim, is here. Our DPW Director, Mr. Phipps, is with me, as well as Ms. Lori Blair-Klausmeyer from the Office of Law. The administration is excited to bring this bill before you this evening. I want to thank the co-sponsors of Bill 72-21. Bill 7221 establishes prevailing wage and local hiring requirements for county capital projects valued over $250,000 or which utilize over $5 million in county funds. A prevailing wage is the basic hourly rate of wages and benefits paid to similar workers within an area. It covers skilled tradesmen, construction workers, and ensures that the men and women who build our county are entitled to a fair pay for a fair day's work. Bill 7221 bases the county's prevailing wage rates on the rates established annually by the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulation for state-funded construction contracts in the county at the time of the award of the capital improvement project. In addition to requiring prevailing wage, 7221 establishes a local hire provision for new employees on large county projects. Contractors must use best efforts to fill at least 51% of new jobs required to complete the capital improvement contract or capital project with county residents. Research has shown that prevailing wage laws boost worker productivity, reduce injury rates, and increase apprenticeship training, which helps address the shortage of skilled labor in construction. Prevailing wage laws benefit workers and their communities by encouraging training, reducing injuries, promoting health care coverage, minimizing disruption to local labor markets, ensuring that minority and female workers receive prevailing wages, ensuring participation in apprenticeship programs. Local hire requirements also help keep local dollars here, benefiting local businesses and the local economy, and create more jobs. So it's a big bill, it's a complicated bill. The team here stands ready to answer any questions, and Mr. Phipps, or if anybody would like to add any comments, please feel free.
I guess that's my cue. Chris Phipps, Director of Public Works. I think just from my perspective, managing the delivery of the capital program, it's important that we have a highly skilled workforce, and being surrounded, enveloped by jurisdictions that have prevailing wage rate laws and regulations puts us at a significant competitive disadvantage. And I think that, there's a pull in the labor market to attract those counties are going to attract the higher skilled workers than we are, and it's also that was referenced in the State General Assembly's 2014 study, where they referenced a couple of studies that actually spoke to the advantage of having higher skilled workers, and that if it is a 2 to 15% increase in cost estimated, that is more than offset by the efficiency gains with the higher skilled workforce. So that's what I'd like to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phipps. Do any of the co-sponsors wish to speak on the bill? If not, I'll open it up to questions from the council. Mr. Volke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Phipps, how long have you been Director of Department of Public Works?
It's been since 2013.
Okay, so 9 years, give or take, 8 or 9?
Yep.
Okay.
8.
How many capital programs have you overseen and brought online in this county?
How many capital programs?
Yes, sir.
Well, I guess prior to that, I was chief engineer since 2001. So
You've been here a long time.
20 years there, yeah.
So how many of those projects have been built that you feel have been built with substandard labor in this county?
I don't, that's not, I have no way to, there isn't a pool of apples to apples comparisons for me to draw a conclusion on that. Because absent building the same project with prevailing wage and the same project without prevailing wage, I really can't comment on that.
Okay. And are there any projects in this county that you think we need to readdress because they were built without prevailing wage, so we now look at them and think they need to be replaced because they weren't up to snuff?
I can't, just similar to the previous response I gave, I'm not in a position to articulate that. But like I had indicated, the 2014 task force, in fact, referenced a couple of professional studies that spoke to the advantage of having prevailing wage and its impact on higher skilled workers, which leads to improved efficiency. So I just have to, based on that evidence, my conclusions on that evidence.
So then my last question to you will be, are there any projects in this county that you think we could have built more efficiently with prevailing wage in the time that you've been in this county over the last 20 years? And if so, can you identify them?
I'm not in a position to do that. I think that, because I don't know when the other jurisdiction, what I'm saying is that we are in a competitive disadvantage with our surrounding neighbors who all have prevailing wage rates. And so, just follow the workers.
Mr. Phipps and everybody else on the panel, and I suppose for all of us, I've just been flagged with a reminder that we should all make sure we say our names for the clarity of the record, because I think, all our masks muffle things a little bit, so it will be helpful to our minute takers. Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. This question actually is for Madam Auditor. In the blue letter that we received, there's a note here that total project costs, if we're looking at the FY22 budget, which was just started in July 1, total project costs, if this bill passes, could increase by as much as $37 million for the projects that are in the FY22 budget. And so my question to Madam Auditor is, if that $37 million had been added into the FY22 budget and then again in the out years, would that put us over debt affordability?
Michelle Belair, County Auditor. I think based on the current budget and capital program, if no other changes were made, then an increase of $37 million per year would get the county to the debt affordability limits more quickly than the current program, because it would add more per year.
Would we be over the debt affordability limit, assuming there's no other changes to the capital program?
Debt affordability is a bunch of different metrics, so we look at over a period of time what would get us more close to those limits they're raised over the years in different periods. So to say in 1 year we would pass it, it's an average per year looking at that, but generally we're spending to a level that the county is comfortable with without going over. So to add $37 million per year would increase that to get closer to those limits. So like there's different limits based on different metrics. So as the revenue increases, that percentage, but I think that the guidance, and I would have to probably get some additional information, it's 11.5, I think was the one, but we know that we can't go beyond that limit. So that's a relatively recent change to increase to that amount. So it's each year, if you continue that spend in the out year, that's why there's different scenarios and assumptions when we do the budget work. So I think when you look at those averages per year, it's an amount that couldn't sustain an additional $37 million increase to stay within affordability over a period of time.
Okay, we could not sustain it. Is that what you just said, over time?
With no other changes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Fiedler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. So, Mr. Phipps, you estimated or stated that a study of some sort noted that an increase in cost of 2 to 15%. can be expected, but members of the council received an email from the president of a local contracting company who said that he does work with jurisdictions that have the prevailing wage rate requirements, and he said that those projects cost the owner 25 to 30% more, and that's a pretty large discrepancy and increase of cost. So if you could clarify where that 2 to 15% came from.
Chris Phipps, Director of Public Works. I didn't prepare the 2 to 15%, but I have to believe some of it is that labor is only a percentage of the overall project cost. So there's still equipment, materials, and things like that that need to be delivered. So the 15%, if that's what we're talking about, or 2 to 15, is the total project cost, of which labor is a certain percentage. If that makes sense?
Madam Chair, may I follow up?
Yes.
So I think we're talking a little bit about two different things. So this is a contracting company that deals with jurisdictions currently that have the prevailing wage requirement, compared to Anne Arundel County right now that does not have the prevailing requirement, wage rate requirement. Comparing the two with similar projects, 25 to 30% more in cost in those jurisdictions versus cost here in Anne Arundel County. I'm not comfortable with the large discrepancy in cost and some of the other concerns.
Councilwoman Fiedler, if I may, Pete Barron with the administration. I believe the studies that were referenced was from the General Assembly's fiscal and policy note on a state bill. I haven't seen the letter from that particular contractor, so I don't think we can explain why they would claim such a large discrepancy, but the Department of Legislative Services that provided that review, I think is a pretty professional body and did a good job of aggregating the various academic sources on that.
Mr. Trumbauer, Mr. Light earlier. Would you like to comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer. On this particular question, so our office, the Budget Office, prepared the fiscal note. The range 2 to 15% came from a number of different surveys and research over the past couple of years. One of them, I think, was by the school system, as Mr. Barron mentioned. Some of them were from the state legislative effort. So there's really no way to give you a precise number. We don't know to what percent is this going to increase costs. We know that it will increase costs. That's in the fiscal note. But the reality is that costs are going up anyway. Labor costs go up every year. So that's something that this council and this administration have to be prepared for. And that's related to a point that I wanted to make regarding Council Member Hare's question, I think, about how much, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting your point now.
It was the debt affordability.
The debt affordability, right, I'm sorry. The budget doesn't work that way, so we deliberate on the departmental requests in the CIP. It's a months-long project, and constantly DPW is updating us on the construction cost estimates and other external factors. So we know the debt affordability limit. We hone in on a capital request that is within that limit. So if projects cost more, that will be incorporated into the ultimate CIP. So we will not add an amount of money to the CIP and go over the debt affordability limit. That's not how we do it.
Thank you. Mr. Volke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To follow up, Nathan Volke, sorry for the record, to follow up on the questions that Councilwoman Fiedler was asking. So the study that you're referencing at the state, you said was 2014, right?
It sounds correct.
Okay. So we've got a 7-year-old study that says that it's 2 to 15%, and then we have a contractor who actually does the work in other jurisdictions and is telling us that it's a 25 to 30% increase, and it's the position of the administration that we should disregard that and go with the 7-year-old number from DLS of 2 to 15%. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, I think as our budget officer stated when they prepared the fiscal note, we looked at a number of studies. I'm not saying we should discount any piece of information, Pete Barron for the record, that when we are looking at what the costs here are, and you see in a study that was produced by, I think it was Pinnacle Economics, that there are other factors that are brought in, additional revenue to the county from, say, local hire provisions or increased efficiency, which will help our projects be done better or last longer. So I think what you're hearing here is the academic research is very mixed on whether it is 1%, because so many factors go in, not just labor costs.
Ms. Pickard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the questions from my colleagues regarding this bill. I think it's important, as we all talk about the reason we're bringing this bill forward, is to make sure we're paying fair wages for a fair day's work. We know from our neighboring large counties that we're the donut hole, and we're the ones that don't have the prevailing wage law, which we're shortchanging our own residents. This bill also brings in a local hire provision, which makes sure that we are building our capital infrastructure here in Anne Arundel County with at least some Anne Arundel County tradespeople. It also encourages apprenticeships, which we know there's a growing desire and a growing need for skilled tradesmen and women in our general economy, not just here in Anne Arundel County, but across the country. We also know that labor costs are not the biggest concern currently to building infrastructure. It's material costs, and they're the most volatile, which are going to have the largest effect on our CIP over the next few years, based on the economy, both here locally and nationally, and, well, internationally for that matter. I'll leave the economist work for my husband, though. This bill also is about our values, and deciding that our workforce and building a middle class here in Anne Arundel County is important, and paying a fair wage for fair labor is important. And it's on the table. It can't always be about the budget. It's important. It certainly is. How we spend our tax dollars are extremely important. But making sure that our capital projects are built on time and on budget, and that the folks building them are going home with a sustainable family wage is important. And we're all going to be voting on those values tonight. So keep that in mind. I look forward to the public hearing. This is a big bill, and it's an important bill. And like I said before, Anne Arundel County is the outlier. The census shows that we're, the fourth largest county now in Maryland? And we got a lot of catching up to do in areas like this.
Ms. Hare?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. Mr. Trumbauer, I just wanted to go back to the conversation we were having about the budget and how it's put together, and understanding that material costs are rising, and that's been, we just saw this with a project in the county, right, that it's causing some increases. So keeping in mind, this bill would increase costs, material costs are increasing, and you're seeing, as you know, you're honing in on the CIP, you get to next year and the costs are much higher because of this bill and materials. I see only a couple of options. Either you cut out projects from the CIP or delay them dramatically, or you increase taxes to offset the costs. Is that, I just want to make sure when you say that you're honing down the CIP, that's essentially, those are the options you're looking at.
Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer. The options we look at are the number of projects coming in, the timing of those projects, how to put that jigsaw puzzle together in a way that comes under the debt affordability limit. So that's how we do it, and we're getting constant updates from Department of Public Works on their updated cost estimates. When we're putting the budget together and after it's submitted to the council, we go back and forth with the auditor's office, because oftentimes information comes in after May 1st when we finalize the budget, and so that's when we adjust things during the supplemental. But there hasn't been conversation about increasing revenue to cover it. It's been, here's what the guidelines are, this is what we have to work with, and let's put the best capital program together that we can.
Okay. Do you agree, though, that could mean delaying projects or cutting them out altogether? If it's not increases in revenue?
That's part of the calculation every year. You've been around, and all the council members have, to know that we have a lot of projects that our good directors submit to us every year. We can't do them all. We do as many of them as we can. We go through a prioritization exercise that does last 3 or 4 months in order to hone it down to what is submitted to the council. So that's part of the process every year. I wish we could do everything, because there's a lot of infrastructure needs and project needs in the county. But we can't do that, and we put the best capital program together that we can.
Thank you.
Mr. Volkey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if there's a question for Mr. Trumbauer or Mr. Phipps, but if the impact of this is actually not the 2 to 15% that you cite in your fiscal note, which is a regurgitation of the 2014 DLS study, because there's really no independent analysis here, it's sort of a regurgitation of DLS. If that number is not 2 to 15%, but is actually the 25 to 30%, how much of your capital program would you have to cut? From a budget standpoint, it's like, what, $320 million capital program? What's the number on that if we had to take 30% off?
Well, Chris Trumbauer, budget officer. So the auditor actually lists that in her blue note when she talks. I think she applied the calculation to the current contracts in the FY22 budget. So that's where the $37 million number came that your colleague asked us about. I think that's right, Madam Auditor.
Which percentage did you apply to that?
Michelle Belair, County Auditor. We applied the 2%, which is the $5 million, and then the 15%, which is the $37 million. Just to provide a little additional information, the fiscal note from DLS for the 2014 session actually gave a 2% to 5% range in the likelihood to increase by approximately that amount. There was an additional task force to study the applicability of the Maryland prevailing wage, also conducted in 2014, that cited an approximate 10% increase. So in calculation of the upper limit of 15%, it included the CPI for an additional time period. That's where the 15% is coming from.
May I follow up, Madam Chair?
Just one.
Thank you. So if we were to double the 15% to 30%, then you become a $74 million hole in the capital program, right?
If it was 30%, then that would be double of 37.
Right. Okay.
Mr. Persky?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilman Andrew Persky. Again, I don't want the crowd to say, how many people here work in construction and trades? Because this is what we're talking about. Okay, how many people, if you got paid a little more money, would probably spend that at locally, because we're asking for a local provision about going to eat and whatever else, okay? So obviously the hand stayed up. Nope. I think we're missing the forest through the trees here, in the sense that I think that people don't understand. We're talking about cost of project revenue, but then on the other hand, if somebody's getting paid a higher wage, where are they spending it if we have a local provision? I think that we really need to continue to talk about that. Again, yes, costs are going up and the other pieces, but I don't hear the fact of people making a little bit more money and also spending that money getting gas. It's a local project and hire. I don't know if the administration wants to add on to that, and I don't have analysis in front of me, but again, I keep hearing the other end of revenue in this side, but I'm not talking about how a person will spend the money locally. So I just think we're looking, it's a two-sided coin. We're talking about one end, well, this is the projects we can't do, but yet if revenue goes up at the other end of people spending money, I don't understand that.
Mr. Trumbauer?
Oh, sorry, my light's just on.
No problem. Ms. Fiedler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. So I want to go back to a question that continues to be asked because I don't think it has been answered yet. With the unknown cost, Mr. Trumbauer, you said, and quote, we don't know how much this will cost. Could we, at some point in the future, have to make a decision that we have to cut capital improvement projects or increase taxes to pay for them? Because I don't believe it can't always be about the budget. I certainly understand wages and getting them back into the economy. But when we're talking about an unknown millions of dollars, and those two questions haven't specifically been answered, I think it's important that we get that on the record. So thank you.
Chris Neimeyer, Budget Officer. I'm going to say this again because I don't think I'm being clear. We cut projects every year. We get submissions, we have to cut projects because we have to get them to fit into our capital program under the debt affordability guidelines and the debt affordability limits. This bill will likely cause some projects to be more expensive. That's outlined in the fiscal note, it's outlined in the county auditor's blue letter. It's impossible for me to tell you exactly how much that will be. I can tell you that costs go up every year. I can tell you that this bill might make costs go up a little bit more than they would already, but every year we have to take projects out that the administration would like to do to make our affordability. So this will be one more factor in that. I mean, I can't tell you what project is not going to get built in 23 because we haven't even set out the parameters of everything that's been submitted by the departments. But again, that is a process that happens every year. I can't be any more specific than that. I'm sorry, council member.
Okay, I'm going to call on Mr. Volke and then Ms. Rodvian, and then I'd like to get to the public hearing while we have all these folks waiting for us to do that. So go ahead, Mr. Volke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nathan Volke. Can anyone tell me what the percentage of employees working on county projects that are over $5 million are in-county residents versus out-of-county residents at the current time?
Pete Barron with the administration. I don't believe we can, but I'm looking to the gentleman on either side of me for agreement. Yeah. We can't give you that number.
Okay, and the only reason I'm asking is because my colleague, Councilman Pruski, brought up the idea that this is going to encourage more hiring of in-county folks. I just want to know where you're relying on the data to support that statement. Where is that coming from?
Pete Barron with the administration. We currently do not have a local hire law.
I understand that. I'm just saying you're making the statement that this is going to increase the number of people who are in-county residents working on these projects. I just want to know, do you know where you are now, and how are you going to measure how much this bill does?
New positions created would have to be 50% local hire using best efforts under the bill.
I think the answer is you don't have the information right now, right?
I think I said that, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Rodvian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lisa Rodvian, District 6. I'm not sure who at the table might be able to answer this, but I've always believed in the concept of you get what you pay for. And if we are moving to a prevailing wage, we are more likely to be having more highly skilled workers on projects. Do you think that's fair to say? I don't know who can answer that.
Pete Barron with the administration. I think everybody at the table would agree, yes.
I saw nodding heads, so I just, for the record, need it to be out loud. And if you have more skilled workers and more skilled people working on the projects to begin with, you're less likely to have to redo work later or make repairs early on. You might save in maintenance costs down the road. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Yes, Mr. Phipps, you want to?
Yes, I think that's a fair, logical extension.
So if we're looking at the cost and we're only looking at the cost up front, we're really not looking at the whole cost of a project. And I think we also mentioned the idea that we're moving to, and I've talked to, I don't actually have the numbers that my colleague from District 3 was looking for either, but I do know that there have been many county projects where subcontractors have brought in workers from several states away in order to be able to pay them significantly lower than what the prevailing wage would allow, and so this would bring job opportunities back to our county. Yes, is that fair to say? Those jobs would much more likely be hired. If we're currently hiring, for a certain aspect of a job, a contractor who has labor from, say, Tennessee or Kentucky. I was born in Tennessee, so nothing against Tennessee or Kentucky. But if we have folks coming in who, don't live in the county, don't spend their money here, are going to take that money home, take a smaller amount of money home, which, considering the cost of living, may be more meaningful to them, then, we're going to get that gain of having that money spent in the county. We're going to have local workers doing local jobs. And this is, I think, ultimately good for the economy, even if we end up spending a little bit more up front, the whole lifetime of a project is going to be more valuable. Is that, or more cost effective? Do you think that's a reasonable?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now open the public hearing on Bill number 7221. Madam Secretary, do we have any testimony received from members of the public?
Yes, Madam Chair. We did receive 7 submissions of online testimony. We also received approximately 28 letters that came through our Dropbox out front or email. That was all shared with the council. It's all been added to the record.
Thank you. Now, time for the in-person testimony. At this time, will Mr. Carl Neimeyer, William Yull, Jermaine Jones, and Thomas Colleen please come forward? I know you all have heard me say this multiple times tonight, but make sure your red light is on if you're speaking. Please begin by stating your name and address for the record, and if you're representing an organization, please also identify the organization. Mr. Neimeyer?
Thank you, Chair Lacey. Thank you, Chair Lacey. County Council members, thank you for the opportunity to testify tonight in strong support of 7221. My name is Carl Neimeyer, 12 Row Lane, Arnold, Maryland. I'm the president and founder of Burner Mechanical and Construction Solutions, a service-disabled veteran-owned small business here in Anne Arundel County. My wife and I fell in love with the area during my last military assignment at the Naval Academy, and we chose to make Anne Arundel County our permanent home to raise our 5 children. We are very invested in our chosen home, which is why I was so pleased to be able to start a business here several years ago. From my company's founding, we have been committed to the quality of our product and the well-being of our workforce, hiring skilled and union employees who earn the prevailing wage with portable health care and retirement benefits. We do this because it is the right thing to do by our workers and our customers. We do this in spite of the market pressures that encourage employers to cut corners by paying workers poorly just to be that lowest bidder without sacrificing their profits up top. And to be frank, the decision to be an ethical employer in this field has prevented us from being able to be competitive for capital projects funded by Anne Arundel County. Our market research revealed that it was simply not worth our time and resources to bid on projects like the Arundel Swim Center Phase 4 renovation because we cannot compete with low-road contractors who can undercut us by not paying their labor the family-supporting wage they deserve. Right now, 1/5 of our workforce lives in the county. Some are lifelong residents. I have a strong desire to recruit, train, and employ more county residents. However, that presents a challenge when other counties are providing well-paying opportunities that ours is not. We can really only be the best place for all if the county government is leading by example and supporting opportunities for all its citizens right here. But it isn't just the workers who benefit from the prevailing wage. As Ms. Rodvian said, you get what you pay for, and regardless of differing political ideas, we all expect good stewardship of our tax dollars. And I have seen the delays, the change orders, and the inferior product that often comes with a cheap price. I strongly believe that employing high-road contractors who committed to paying fair prevailing wages is a benefit to the county. When you ensure that the bidders know how to run a successful business without relying on shortchanging the worker, this will yield more qualified bidders and higher quality work that lives up to expectations, thus avoiding costly repairs and dissatisfied constituents.
Thank you, Mr. Neimeyer, and thank you for your service also, sir. Mr. Yull?
Yes, my name is William Yull. I'm the director for the National Electrical Contractors Association of Maryland, 1436 Andre Street in Baltimore, but my office is located 1743 Dorsey here in Anne Arundel County. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this evening. NECA is the voice of the $171 billion electrical construction industry. Nationally, NECA represents over 70,000 electrical contractors across the United States, and in this state of Maryland, I had the pleasure of representing over 75 contractors who employ 2,000 Maryland residents. In fact, we have several of our members companies that are located right here in your jurisdiction. We strongly support Bill 7221. We view the adoption of prevailing wage requirements as a win-win for both workers, taxpayers, and local high-road contractors. From a contractor's perspective, prevailing wage helps retain a trained and skilled workforce by promoting apprenticeship programs and providing higher wages for skilled craftsmen, which in turn reduces workforce turnover, reduces injury rates, boosts worker productivity while minimizing job site disruptions. All these factors combined effectively help offset the impact of prevailing wage on construction cost. Another benefit of prevailing wage is that it will will help Anne Arundel County contractors compete and win county public work contracts. This is because prevailing wage laws enable local contractors to submit competitive bids based on the wages they need to pay to attract local construction workers. Finally, the utilization of prevailing wage promotes a higher quality of craftsmanship on publicly funded projects that protects both taxpayers in the community and the workers on said job sites. In the construction industry, most projects are awarded to the lowest bidder, which incentivizes low-road contractors to do anything to get the lowest bid, whether they be by cutting corners or worse, stealing wages from hard-working employees, which we unfortunately see much too often through worker misclassification. By promoting prevailing wage, we are guaranteeing that all contractors and all are on the same level playing field, pay fair and honest wages to all their employees, ensure a stable, well-qualified workforce is on county public work projects. Thank you for your opportunity to speak, or for the opportunity to speak in support of this bill. On behalf of NECA and the community of Anne Arundel County, please vote in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Yule. Jermaine Jones?
Yes, Jermaine Jones, 3600 O'Donnell Street, with the Baltimore DC Building Trades. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the council. First, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of Bill 7221. As I said earlier, I'm the Baltimore Area Director for the Baltimore DC Building Trades. The Baltimore DC Building Trades represents 24 local affiliates with over 25,000 skilled craft professionals in the building and construction industry. We advocate for advancements in the construction industry, in addition to ensuring every worker receives an honest day's pay for a hard day's work, return home safely to their families, and receive health care and retirement that they can rely on one day. Our affiliated apprenticeship program spends more than $22 million annually on apprenticeship and journeyman upgrade training. The Baltimore Building Trades strongly support Bill 7212. This bill is not only beneficial to the county, but to the worker as well. Research shows where there's prevailing wage laws, there's also a boost in worker productivity, a reduction in injury rates, and an increase in apprenticeship training. And it also provides a boost to local tax revenue without raising construction costs. In addition, from the workers' perspective, prevailing wage raises the standard for middle-class workers. County residents deserve not just jobs, but jobs with family-supporting wages. If someone lives in the county, they should also be able to work in the county and receive a wage which supports the county's cost of living. Lastly, prevailing wage helps to minimize the race and gender income gap. Unfortunately, across this country, so many workers still experience wage disparities solely due to their race and gender. And research shows that the income gap between African American and white laborers is 12% less in states with prevailing wage. In closing, last month we celebrated Labor Day. Many of us took time to pay tribute to American workers. I encourage you not only to support those workers in September, but throughout the entire year by passing this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Killeen?
Yes, good evening, Chair Lacey and members of the Anne Arundel County Council. My name is Thomas Killeen. I reside at 8 Evergreen Trail in Severna Park, Maryland. I've lived in Anne Arundel County for 32 years. I've coached sports. My children have gone to school in Anne Arundel County, and I also am a member of Anne Arundel County Workforce Development Board. This bill will provide county residents, I'm here tonight to ask you to pass the bill 7221 as is with no amendments. This bill will provide county residents who work in the building trades a wage in line with Anne Arundel County's cost of living and an opportunity to work close to home. Paying the prevailing wage benefits all county residents by allowing workers to shop and live in the county, helping local businesses increase the county's tax base. In closing, I ask once again that you pass this bill as is for Anne Arundel County residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This panel is dismissed. Next up, I have Ms. Roxana Maya, Ray Cleland, Brian Cavey, and Raymond Douglas Cleland, unless... Okay. Then Kurt Snyder, if you're here, please also come to the table at this time. And Brian Cavey. Okay. And Miss Oliveira. I should stop calling her name, except She signed up, so if I don't call her, she might get mad later. Okay, Concepcion Morales. And we'll go ahead and start with you, Ms. Mejia.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Lacy and members of the Anne Arundel County Council. My name is Roxana Mejia. I'm a member of the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, proudly headquartered right here in Anne Arundel County. Thank you for the opportunity to testify tonight in support of Bill 7221. This bill is very important to me and other women in the construction industry. Having prevailing wage in the county will help eliminate the gender wage gap that exists for women in the construction industry. This is because prevailing wage does not look at a person's gender to determine wages. Rather, prevailing wages are calculated through impartial surveys and reflect what workers in the area are actually making. This prevents employers from offering women and people of color like me lower wages. Furthermore, this bill encourages local hire and will provide opportunities for many county residents from all walks of life to have careers in the construction industry and to have a decent wage to have a better quality of life in the county. So please, vote in support and in favor of Bill 7221. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mejia. Mr. Cleveland, your turn again.
Yes, Raymond Cleveland, 1146 St. Catherine Drive, Annapolis, Maryland. I am the president of Ironworkers Local 5. Earlier you asked, why is there a wage difference? It's because there's no enforcement. There is a misclassification on a lot of jobs that end up going backwards and not being able to catch who's doing something wrong. And also, there is a lot of, in this country right now, a lot of illegal immigrants that are working for these contractors. The ABC around the corner, obviously, is, a perpetuate of it. What those people, you understand, this protects also those workers. Why are they happy when there's a prevailing rate? Because at that point in time, they're going to get $50 in their pocket instead of 18 and 23. They love it. That's why these contractors, when they bid on it, there's misclassifications, and they come in there and they get these jobs from us. And then what happens? They abuse the workers that they got. The worker loves it because he goes up to $50 an hour for a 6-month job. Then he's back down to 18, 20 bucks an hour. The difference is that difference in scale pays for our kids' health care, pays for us for a pension, for retirement later. These are the things that we get that they don't get. So is there a difference in scale? Yes, there is. The reason there is, the contractors get more of the money. I'm not saying people don't get health care, but what happens is they give you the health care but not your family. So now you got to pay for the health care out of your family's pocket, out of your wages, to make sure they're covered with health care. So there's many reasons how they exploit the system. But, I just would like to thank Ms. Lacy, Woodvaron, Pruski, and Pickard for your thoughts in this matter. And I'm definitely in support of this going through. But you asked where the difference in cost is. That's the cost.
Thank you, Mr. Cleveland. Mr. Schneider?
Good evening, Chair Lacy and council members. My name is Kurt Snyder. I live at 2110 Megan Court in Crofton, Maryland. And I represent the Sheet Metal Contractors Association of the Mid-Atlantic. And my position is support of Bill 7221. My primary duty is marketing and communication, even though I'm a former naval officer and I have many multi-million-dollar project improvements on warships. And what we've seen is, like so many others have testified to, when you bank on the fair wage, what our contractors expect, and a prevailing wage, it's just not about the numbers. You're saying to the younger generation, there's a career for you. And that's the big thing. I think we get lost in the numbers, and sometimes we need to look at the big picture of what's going on. So SMACNA is a worldwide organization headquartered in Chantilly, 3,500 union HVAC and sheet metal contractors. 45 members are headquartered here in Maryland, including many in Anne Arundel County. So who do our contractors work with? National Security Agency, a 3-letter entity I can't mention. Presidential helicopter hangars, overseas embassies, ventilation system at the White House. I'll stop there. Quality. federal government recognizes SMACNA contractors to a certain standard, just like other people here tonight. But from the contractor's perspective, prevailing wage is very helpful. That's because prevailing wage requirements level the playing field for reputable high-road contractors, like so many have stated before me, and they mitigate or minimize the bottom feeders, the ones who lurk in the shadows. They smile when they get the contract, they go back into the darkness, and they really don't pay their workers and benefits that they should. So SMACT also supports the local hiring portion of Bill 7221. It's absolutely good public policy to have local tax dollars create jobs here in Anne Arundel County, and the prevailing wage is essential for that. So thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts on this, and SMACT supports Bill 7221.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Mr. Morales?
Good evening, Chair Lacy and council members. My name is Concepcion Morales. I live at 101 Baltimore Avenue, Glen Burnie. I'm here to support the Bill 72-21. I am a construction worker. I'm a carpenter by trade, member of the Local 197. And as a county resident, I will ask that the taxpayers' money be expensed wisely in a responsible manner by hiring responsible contractors who will pay fair wages to the workers. For so long, the work-class people has been oppressed in this county, and it's time to pass the prevailing wage and local hiring bill. I believe this bill will help to prevent some contractors abuse the vulnerable workforce. Vulnerable workforce is all those people who here undocumented, those people who doesn't speak the language, and those people the contractors know and they abuse on purpose because they know those people vulnerable. So this somehow this bill will help to regulate the process by hiring workers, and also will regulate on the process when the county is selecting the contractors, will level somehow the field play. Also, this will prevent big time. This will go against the tax fraud going on construction workers. So fair pay day for a fair day work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morales. This panel is dismissed. And now, if there is anyone in the audience who didn't sign up beforehand but wishes to speak now on Bill number 7221, please come down to the table. Anyone else? Go ahead, Mr. Dole.
Thank you. David Dole, 534 Heavy Tree Hill, Silverton Park, Maryland, Chairman of the Anne Arundel County Libertarians. So I heard big picture, and I just wanted to, maybe nobody has the answer for this, but what percentage of the GDP is being invested in these capital projects? I mean, we're talking about like, oh, we're going to do all these great things for these workers, but like seems like a very tiny percentage of the workers in Anne Arundel County. A gentleman said that workers are making $18 to $23 an hour. I make less than that. I'm wearing a suit that I got at a thrift store. You're going to subsidize them getting more money at my expense as the taxpayer. We talked about morals. That's immoral. That's not American.
Thank you, Mr. Dole. Ms. Johnson?
Julie Johnson, P.O. Box 6634, Annapolis, Maryland. I was not going to speak, but I just have to. A lot of you know I'm a retired teacher, and so I need a little bit of teaching time here, because this discussion certainly focused on the bill, which is appropriate, but we need to look at how did the income, how did what happened to the labor, the whole budget. Bernie Sanders was a real popular figure, because he was saying people need a livable wage. And so how did it happen that we lost a livable wage? Well, I'm so old that my parents are from the generation that survived the Great Depression. And their yearbooks talked about what is the world going to be like when we get through this terrible ordeal. And so what happened was you had, World War, people fought in World War II, they came back, and so the economy began booming, but a big part of that was good wages for the workers, for the labor movement. If you want to read some really moving books, I would really recommend John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath, to understand that people would work for, the initial price was 5 cents a bushel for picking fruit. Somebody else says, hey, I'll work for 4 cents a bushel. Hey, my family's starving, I'll work for 3. And so the wages were driven down. And this was the beginning, or a part of, the labor movement. And then as you got farther along, through the 50s, people's wages were doing really well. And then as you got up to, frankly, to Ronald Reagan, he started he fired all of the air traffic controllers, which was the death knell for an awful lot of the labor movement, and people started, really frowning upon the labor movement. Well, we'll mention the fact that there were some corrupt, labor people. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Okay, the public hearing on Bill number 7221 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 7221.
Bill number 7221, an ordinance concerning purchasing, capital improvement contracts, prevailing wage, and local hiring.
All right, we do have an amendment. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 1.
Amendment number 1. This technical amendment corrects a typographical error.
Is there a motion to adopt?
Rodvian, so moved.
Is there a second?
Allison Pickard, second.
Thank you. Does anyone want to discuss the typo from revision to revisions? Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 1.
Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Mr. Pruski.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacey.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment number 1 is adopted.
Okay, because we were fixing a typo that was not in a monetary amount, we can vote on this bill tonight, even though we just amended it. Is there any further discussion at this time? Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nathan Volkey. One of the comments that was raised during the public testimony was a discussion about people who are in this country without lawful status working, and the idea that they're being used to undercut the system. I am curious, does this legislation provide any protections to ensure that the county will only contract with contractors who are hiring and screening for people who are here in the country with lawful status?
Pete Barron with the administration. This bill does not speak to anything around immigration status.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nathan Volkey, District 3. Are there any provisions in county law currently that would require that the county only do business or contract with entities who are ensuring that they're hiring people who have lawful status?
There are a number, Pete Barron, the administration, there are a number of federal rules around employment, and I believe the county would have to abide by all of them. I will defer to anybody at the table who might know of any specific county provisions, but I am not aware of any.
Ms. Pickard?
Allison Pickard. Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I thought you were asking me to answer my question. I just wanted to take a moment to thank the folks that came and spoke on behalf, in support of this bill. Roxana, the emotion, I could hear the emotion in your voice, and I appreciate you stepping out and stepping up in support of gender equity and pay.
in the construction trades. I also want to emphasize the need that we have in this country for growing our skilled trades, and I'm excited to see Anne Arundel County taking this step forward to encourage our youth and our young people to take a different path than what we've been encouraging them to do for the last few decades that put us in this position. There is excellent potential for family-sustaining wages in the construction trades, and I know we have young people interested in working with their hands rather than maybe seeking a very expensive college education. So this is just bringing us forward in line, again, like we've talked about with our neighboring counties. And I do want to just thank everybody who came out to speak and have been supporters of fair pay for a fair day's work. Thank you.
Ms. Schuett, did you have something to add?
I just wanted to say that although the purchasing agent can dispute, I'm almost 100% certain that there's a provision in all county contracts that say you have to comply with all federal, state, and local law. So that's it. Thank you.
Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. So for those that came out and testified this evening, I certainly appreciate the work that the tradesmen, tradeswomen do, but we're not just talking about appreciation here, and that is where I have expressed my concerns and tried to get definite answers from the administration, because at the end of the day, this is going to fall to the taxpayer if we do not want to make potential, because I'm not sure what the answer was, cuts to the capital improvement project. So, there are other ways to increase and encourage interest in trades for our youth, and I just cannot support a bill where we don't know how much it will cost. We don't know the breakout of Anne Arundel County residents working in the industry. We didn't reach out to the contractor specifically to find out what it would do to their business and their increase in cost. And we are relying on a 14-year-old study that doesn't take anything into account with the current economy. So that's where I am this evening, and I will be casting my vote momentarily.
Ms. Rodvian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To speak directly to the current state of the economy, I think most of us are aware that there are labor shortages in many fields, and we need to be mindful of what we can do to make sure that we actually have qualified people and skilled people to fill the contracts that our county will have with various projects going forward. I also think one of the things that we leave out of this conversation quite frequently is externalized costs. So we talk about, what is the upfront cost of the project? Well, the upfront cost of the project may be lower if you're paying a lower wage, if you're not paying a prevailing wage, but you can end up it ends up not really coming out. You end up not coming out ahead when you have, for example, employees who are paid less money and end up needing to have different forms of government assistance. They need to rely on emergency medical care because they don't have health insurance and have to, ultimately, it comes back to the taxpayer. So we think about, the different things that might be in the upfront cost, but we ignore those externalized costs. We ignore the fact that a project that is completed by highly skilled workers can be completed more promptly in most situations than lower paid workers who are likely less skilled and less experienced. So what have we lost in the use of the different projects that we are creating for our county when we don't have those facilities available for an addition, for a longer period of time? I'm imagining a school that maybe is 6 months less in time to build because we have skilled workers doing it. That means students are in quality facility more promptly, because we have skilled workers, and schools are actually already covered by state contract and covered by state prevailing wage law. But as an example of something, we gain the use of whatever facilities or projects that we are putting in, and the lost time of having those facilities. So I think we're just, we're focusing too much on one bottom line as opposed to all of the different costs that come down the road, and to continue to ignore those costs and pretend that they're not part of the equation, to pretend that it's irrelevant that we would hire workers for but contractors would hire workers for out of state, who would then take their money and spend it out of state instead of spending it here in the local economy, or that their taxes are not paid into our local economy. All of those things add up. And so on top of the fact that it's really just the right thing to do, if you are as us as the county or any employer, if you are taking a person and basically taking everything that they can give in terms of their personal effort, their human resource, we call human resources, but their human resource, and taking their 40 hours a week, or maybe in some cases more, after that they may not have much to give, they should be able to support themselves. If you take that from a worker, if you take that amount of work, they should be able to support themselves. And we shouldn't put that burden on someone else. That is our burden to carry, and that is ours collectively, not just not just a small group of people. So I'm absolutely going to support this. It's 100% the right thing to do to make sure that workers get what they deserve, that they can make an affordable, that they can make a decent living. We know that research shows that if we have well-paid workers, that buoys others in that same economy, in that same economic space. And we should, this is a place where we can make that passing this law will benefit workers in all fields. So this is absolutely the right thing to do.
Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. A quick comment and then a couple of follow-up questions. I think it's factually incorrect to suggest that the prevailing wage bill would somehow solve any and all delays or make sure that all projects are completed on time and things like that. We have entire boards of contract appeals in the country, the Armed Services Board of Contract Appeals, the Civilian Board of Contract Appeals. Maryland has its own, the Maryland State Board of Contract Appeals, the Court of Federal Claims. Their entire job is to hear contract disputes, many times over delays, on state and federal jobs. So, and then those projects are subject to Davis-Bacon or state prevailing wage laws. So, I mean, certainly to say that there'll be no more delays because of prevailing wage, I just don't think that that's a factually correct statement to make. Separately, we've heard a lot of testimony about kind of this race to the bottom, and I wanted to ask, I think this question is probably for Mr. Heim, procurement. A lowest bid is not the only way to procure a project, right?
Andrew Heim, County Purchasing Agent, that is correct. Yeah, there are multiple ways to award contracts.
So there's an ability for procurement to use something like a best value contract or some other form like that, which wouldn't necessarily have this race to the bottom, right?
Andrew Heim, Anne Arundel County Purchasing Agent. Yes, there are multiple ways to be able to secure different types of contracts, but in the process and programs that we have established for capital construction, as well as AE and other types of solicitations, the low bid is the preferred method of how we, in the normal process for doing that.
Okay, but it's not the only way. Okay. I have one other unrelated question, Madam Chair. Thank you. Jessica Hare, District 7 still. We talked about this a little bit at the work session in the local hiring provision. Couple of pieces here. Mr. Barron, we talked about how it discusses there's a definition of the department, but it doesn't say which department would oversee any of this. And then there's this requirement to use best efforts to secure local hires, and there are quite a number of penalties for failing to use best efforts to get local hires. But there's no definition of best hires, and we don't even know in this bill who's going to be overseeing the program. And we asked about this at the work session. Has there been any kind of just update on that? Do we have an idea of which department's going to be overseeing it? Do we have a definition of best efforts? Is it one career fair? Is it 3? What's the standard we're holding people to?
Thank you, Pete Barron with the administration. I think the comments I made at the work session stand. We have not. There is no new addition. I will say, I think there was a discussion around where the purchasing agent sits, and that remains. The purchasing agent will help provide a lot of that guidance.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Volke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nathan Volke, District 3. Ms. Schuett, thank you for clarifying that about the provision to comply with federal law, which got to my point, which is this whole idea of the immigrants are taking our jobs and thereby undercutting us and thereby causing shoddy workmanship is really a false argument, because that's not in fact what's happening, because the county already is required to work with contractors who are hiring people who are here with lawful status.
Pete Barron with the administration, the administration never made that argument.
I'm not saying you did. That was a comment that I heard in public testimony, which is why I wanted to understand the basis of it. With that said, I'm going to come back to Mr. Phipps because he's been here for a while, for at least 3 to 5 administrations by my count, somewhere in that range. You were asked a series of questions by Councilwoman Rodvian where she sort of led you down this path of you're going to pay more up front, that's going to lead to better value down the road, and it's going to be less redos and less shoddy work, and on we went, and everyone agreed and said, yes, these assumptions are all correct. I'd just like to know in the last 20 years if you can give me a project that you've worked on or that the Department of Public Works has brought to Anne Arundel County where they allowed a contractor to do shoddy work that is now turned around and cost county taxpayers more money on the back end.
Chris Phipps, Director of Public Works. Again, I think this is not an argument or a comparison I can draw because I don't know, I can't compare it against a project that would have had the prevailing wage and how that would have stacked up against any other project for very, very many different reasons, may have been successful or failed. That beyond workmanship and design, weather, there's so many variables. You can't isolate all of them and do this kind of one-to-one comparison that everyone seems to want to have, but it's just even the state's 2014 study, they had hundreds of data sets, data points, not just one, for a contractor that claims it was 25% more if he bid prevailing wage. But what they did show is that they broke those contracts into disciplines, and they evaluated each of the disciplines, whether it's masonry work, roofing work, mechanical, electrical, painting, and painting was the highest. It was around 25 to 28% because it's mostly labor. Mechanical, electrical came in around 12 to 15. Roofing, 4%. So you start to, it depends on the nature of the project and how that project is built in terms of percentage of labor, percentage of material, percentage of electrical, mechanical equipment. So again, there's just so many variables. Even the state said that's why we have such a broad range of 2 to 15% because there's not one size fits all.
Another question?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Nathan Volke. So, Mr. Phipps, I hear you on that. This was a utility contractor that reached out to us, not a painting contractor or an HVAC contractor or anything like that. It was a utility contractor who gave us that number. But I guess the struggle that I have is if you're not able to point to any project where there's been a higher down the road cost because the county used bad contractors or subcontractors on the front end, then how is it that you can go to the other side of that and draw the inference that somehow if we pass this, the county taxpayers are going to get a better bang for their buck, or they're going to see better quality work, or it's going to be more efficient, or it's going to be more cost effective? I don't understand how you can have one side of that coin and say, well, I can't answer, I can't point to anything, but on the flip side you can say, but absolutely things will get better. So if you got anything that you can provide on that, I would appreciate it.
Chris Phipps, Director of Public Works. I cite the evidence that's supported in the 2014 DLS study, and they quote different. There was the Duncan 2011 study found that the increased productivity and efficiency of workers on prevailing wage projects offset the higher cost of wages. Phillips 2011 study, or 2001 study, provides an explanation for how increased productivity offsets higher wage rates. Prevailing wage regulations include contractors to hire a more skilled labor force, equip them with better and more up-to-date tools, materials, and equipment. I mean, I can't provide what you're looking for, which is like a test tube example of success or failure. All I can do is go back to the literature that suggests higher skilled, higher paid workers are going to give us a higher skilled workforce, better equipped to provide better projects.
Mr. Phipps, Sarah Lacey, District 1. Prevailing wage it's not a new concept, is it?
Chris Phipps, Director of Public Works. I probably should defer to my contracting agent, the purchasing agent, but that's something probably closer in his bailiwick.
Okay, because I'm not a labor scholar per se, but even I could Google and find that prevailing wage was, part of the earliest labor movements in the early 1900s, where a few states started adopting prevailing wage laws, and then we get the federal prevailing wage law, I think in 1931. So, I mean, this not only is this not a new concept, it's one where there's a whole lot more data than the 2014 DLS study available to look at, right?
Yes, Andrew Heim, purchasing agent for Anne Arundel County. To the first question, which is this a new concept? And no, it's not. It's been around for a long period of time. I can go off of my own experience with it, which might be helpful to the council members here. I started my career in construction, undergraduate degree in construction management, working in the Chicagoland area, where every contract for home building was a union contract. I gained great experience with being able to learn how to manage construction projects for Pulte Homes, Del Webb, and being able to build construction projects at one of the fastest schedules in the Midwest. And one of the benefits of being able to, when the economic downturn hit, that was really beneficial of prevailing wage was having the capability of contractors to be able to come in and support and build homes faster and more effective and more efficient than what could be done in a structure where you have smaller contractors with more individualized operations. So you can take a home building project where you're building 5,000 homes on a 120-day schedule and turn that into an 80 or 90-day schedule because of the bench strength and support of contractors' capabilities and operations. Coming out here to the Mid-Atlantic, when I moved out here, the capacity for prevailing wage and for contractors in that kind of operation is much smaller. There's certainly not the capability of that operation. And I think from just the benefits, everything that's already talked to about not only the economic benefit of it, but also the benefit from increasing the leveling the playing field, increasing the number of capable companies being able to respond to it. Although it does create possibility of additional cost, additional administrative operations, it does create an opportunity for increased number of contractors.
Thank you, Mr. Heim. That was very helpful. Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. So this is just a comment to kind of, I think, summarize what Councilman Volke was asking again and again, and I'm still trying to understand how we can say, or how the folks before us can say it will result in a better product with more experience when we can't cite a previous CIP, capital improvement project, that would have been better had we had prevailing wages. So I'm just going to file this question and this continued question in a we don't know the answer category for this legislation. Thank you.
Ms. Rodvian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lisa Rodman, District 6. I know we may not be able to provide examples in this county, but I think you've cited many studies that have looked at this issue and have indeed found that we have efficiencies and higher quality of work. I also wanted to just clarify something that my colleague Ms. Hare mentioned that I said, and if I didn't say this, I want to make sure that this is my line of thinking, that I didn't mean to indicate that with prevailing wage you would never have delays. It was that that you would likely have fewer delays. And I think that Mr. Himes actually just kind of gave an example where you could complete projects on a shorter work schedule where you had highly skilled workers and workers, in fact, even workers that are accustomed to working together, you kind of get in a rhythm with the colleagues that you have. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Ms. Hare?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. I just want to go back to something that Councilwoman Lacey mentioned just a minute ago about kind of how the federal labor law had been around since the 1930s, I think. I do want to note for anybody who is reading this now for the first time or whatnot, there are a number of provisions in this bill that go far beyond what the federal Davis-Bacon wages do, particularly, and we discussed this at length at the work session, but particularly kind of this joint and several liability as well as this private cause of action that's created here. So, and that, to my understanding, tracks very recent state law as recently as 2019. So there are some actually very new provisions in here that go quite a bit beyond what the federal law has ever done.
Mr. Volke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nathan Volke. Mr. Phipps, I'm going to follow up with you because you have the longevity. Under the Owens administration, did they introduce any prevailing wage legislation to the County Council?
Chris Phipps, Director of Public Works. I can't. I don't know.
Okay. You were here during some of the Owens administration.
But I wasn't a director under Ms. Owens.
Do you recall any of this being introduced during the Leopold administration, the Newman administration, or the Shue administration?
Pete Barron with the county executive. To our knowledge, this is the first prevailing wage bill in Anne Arundel County.
Okay, and this has been around since the earliest days of the labor movement in the early 20th century, maybe even the late 19th century.
Prevailing wage, that is?
Yeah, right. That's what Madam Chair said. Yeah, okay. So in all that time, in all these different administrations, nobody's ever brought this forward before. Is that my understanding?
This administration, Councilman, yourself, you have brought forward bills that no person has brought before. Progress, we're all making our mark here, sir.
All right, got it.
Ms. Rodvian, do you have a final?
Actually, just a quick Google search indicates that prevailing wage actually goes back to the Civil War. So it's even a little older than the 1930s.
Ms. Pickard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. While I am ready to call the question, I do want to let everyone on this council know and in the audience know that we already have prevailing wage on one of the largest segments of our CIP, which is school construction, and it's been that way for a long time. While there are probably workarounds to prevailing wage where the state is paying, if the state is investing at least 25% of our capital expense for our new schools, then prevailing wage is the rule of the day. Anne Arundel County qualifies for state investment of 50% of our schools, so you can guess that most of our schools are being built with labor that are being paid a prevailing wage, and now we're extending that to other capital county projects with our tax dollars. This isn't a new thing. This isn't radical. Let's get this done tonight. I'm ready to call the question.
Mr. Volke, do you have a final point?
I was just going to note, now I understand why the school construction costs so much.
Mr. Pruski.
I do believe I need to respond, because there was a question, why hasn't this brought up? Well, maybe it's about time it is brought up. And there's people here that testified here tonight. Just saying, it took a while, and it takes leadership to stand up at times. And as I said before, we can argue over cost, different things, but, it's a bill brought forward. Everyone has that chance.
Madam Secretary, please call the roll on bill number 7221 as amended.
Ms. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Volke?
No.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler?
Nay.
Ms. Rodvian?
Aye.
Ms. Hare?
Nay.
Ms. Lacey?
Aye.
4 in the affirmative, 3 in the negative. Bill number 7221 as amended is passed.